Hello there, beautiful people. Welcome to my podcast. This is Sheelaa Bajaj. I'm a life coach. I'm a motivational speaker, a relationship coach, and an author. I've authored a book called The Love Mirage, and I suggest everyone who's listening to the series on love to read the book, The Love Mirage. It's available on Amazon, and it's a good read. It's a book that's completely channeled. For those of you who don't know what channeling is, you'll figure it out. All right, today's episode number 19. And in today's episode, the topic that I'm going to take is compromise. This is something that I've dabbled in and dealt with in the book as well. So if you're listening to this, you'd probably want to also read the book because compromise is a very interesting subject and a very important subject to look at in your life in relationships. And it's something that all of us go through every day, and it's an emotion or a gesture that can actually get the better of you if you're not aware of what it really is. So we've been told, especially in Indian culture, we've been told that it's good to compromise. It's almost taught to you like a virtue. So in our culture, from the longest time from when I can remember, I remember being taught that you have to compromise in order to create peace, happiness, and it's a good quality. It's almost like something you build. So it builds your personality, or you were a better person somehow if you compromised. And so I went through a stage of probably rebellion where I just rebelled against everything that was told to me that was, that I should be doing. But after a bit, I think at some point in life, I thought, okay, let's look at compromise. And I did use compromise in one very, very important major relationship in my life, my first marriage. And I remember thinking about compromise as something that was going to actually save the day, save my marriage, save, the relationship. So when you go through some sort of abuse, or when you go through some sort of dominance or control from someone, it always need not be abuse for everyone, but it is control. And control is a form of abuse. We just like to call it control to not make it look so bad. But when we get controlled or when we get dominated by people, we think that compromise will just keep things peaceful and not upset the apple cart. And most people want that, right? Like all of us, when we compromise with our partners or with parents or with friends or whoever, or a bad boss, you just don't want to upset the apple cart. Most times you're running away from facing what you have to face because there's a fear of losing. So what hides behind compromise is a fear of losing. You first got to look at that. Now that's your biggest weakness. That's your biggest crutch. I'm going to tell everyone who's hiding behind this and who's holding on to that crutch, that is the beginning of your downfall. Every time you fear losing what you fear, you are going to get one step closer to your downfall and moving away from your phenomenons. So all of these audios are to move you towards your phenomenons, and there's this one thing, which is your fear of losing either your husband or your wife or your partner, your kid or your parent or your boss or your job. So there's always this one thing that you fear losing, and you end up compromise in order to keep that peace. Most times, I meet a lot of couples. For some reason, I do a lot of relationship coaching. And I coach a lot of couples who are in a troubled marriage. And I'm going to say most couples compromise because they think that that's going to keep the peace in the marriage. And I'm going to tell you it's the opposite. I'm going to tell you that there's no need to do that. You should not be compromising. No one should be compromising. Everyone should be being themselves and living their truth. If there's something that upsets you, you need to speak it out to your partner. But there's no need for anyone to control anyone. No one gets to control anyone. No one needs to compromise to that control. So a lot of times we think that compromise is going to get us joy, buy us peace, but it actually makes the other person more controlling. Think about it. Every time you compromised, you just got more shit. And it's just a series, and it's just going to double up. It's just going to, become more and more and more. You compromise, and again, the person gets more dominating. You compromise a little more, the person dominates a little more. And every time the control and abuse gets worse, until a point that you can't take it anymore, and then you burst out. There's no need for being passive aggressive. You can just put an end to compromise by just saying, is this fun for me? Is this honoring myself? Am I being kind to myself by compromising? Is this what I really want to do? A lot of times we don't go into question. We don't ask ourselves these questions. We don't even put ourselves as the number one priority. And like I said, the one way to do this is put your kid in your place and say, would I ask my daughter or my son to compromise in this exact situation? You'll get all your answers crystal clear. No ambiguity. Like I've done that so many times, and I realized that I was willing to compromise sometimes. And as soon as I put my kid into that picture, in that exact same situation that I put my son into that picture and I said, would I want my son to compromise? Would I advise him to compromise in the situation? And I get a big no. And immediately it gives me so much perspective and clarity that I'm so grateful for my kids, because we love our kids so much, and we've got their back. We can look at it objectively when it comes to our kids. But it's almost because we don't have that love for ourselves, or even if you think you have love for yourself, you sometimes put yourself last. You sometimes put your fear, you make your fear bigger than you. So your fear of losing that relationship or that person is so much bigger that you lose sight of that awareness and clarity. And that's why you end up compromising. Now, compromise sometimes is okay. Like, it's not always that you got to sit in your comfort zone. So there are lots of times you're in your comfort zone. That should be the majority of it. Okay? Because there's no rule book that says you got to compromise all the time. So majority of the time, 95% of the time or 90% of the time, you got to do what's fun for you. You got to do what you love doing. You got to live your truth. You can incorporate other people's joy in that. All right. And if your truth is just to be alone, if that's your fun, that you just want to be alone, well, then that's something that you need to look at. You need to re-look at your priorities and your decisions in life, because if it doesn't include your family, if it doesn't include your partner, then you have to reassess your relationship. So, going back to compromise, so 90 to 95%, you got to do things from your comfort zone. There are going to be about 5 to 10% of things that you're going to do from your collective comfort zone. Now, you really don't prefer to do that. You don't really like to do that. But then you do it because, it's like a in-between. It's not something that's killing you, but it's not the most preferable. So we do things in our collective comfort zone as well. And that we do as a contribution to people around us. We don't do it to sacrifice. Now I hate going for action movies, and I hate going to very violent kiddie movies, like these superhero movies. Nowadays are just so violent, and I find that very disturbing. So, sometimes when my kids want me to go to this super violent movie, I tell them I'm really not up to it, because I don't want to put myself into a complete discomfort zone of sitting through a movie which is so much violence, because it's uncomfortable. So you've got to look at your comfort as well. This is not fun for me. Just because it's fun for my kids, I'm not going to put myself through discomfort. But let's say there's a movie that's really idiotic, that doesn't make me uncomfortable. Or there are certain things, maybe going to a certain place or a certain activity that doesn't give me great joy, but neither does it give me any discomfort. So sometimes you do that because you want to do it also as a contribution to your kids. Largely, I tell people, choose things that's fun for you and them. And I'm going to tell you that your kids will love that. I choose activities that I absolutely love. And I realize that my kids love that also, because if I'm having so much fun, they're going to have fun with me. So this whole thing of compromising, we think as parents we need to compromise. It's really something that we've just been taught and told, and it there's so much judgment. You have to be some sacrificing, compromising, pathetic person. There's almost some kind of a greatness in that, giving up your own happiness for your children. That never works out. I've heard so many people of an older generation throwing this at their children and saying, oh, I did this for you, I sacrificed that for you, I gave up my job for you, I gave up my holidays for you, and what do I get in return? So you see, there's this sadistic thing that we slap people with, our loved ones. So sometimes women will do that for their husbands, and they'll say, I gave up my career, I gave up this, I gave up that, I gave up blah, 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 and what did you do for me? So this is not love. And anyone who's doing this right now is listening. And if you think you've actually given your partner a whole lot of love, that's a whole lot of bullshit. That is not love. That is just you doing those things in order to then put a price and put a bill on it. It's like you just conveniently sacrifice without asking that person, like doing things on your own accord. You made those compromises, you made those sacrifices, and there is this small sadistic pleasure you get out of slapping it on that person in the end. It's like you go and walk in, somebody walks into a restaurant and eats a whole lot of food. You don't tell them that there's a price for it. And then later on, you're like, no, 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 I want to make this for you. I want to make that for you. And at the end of it, you slap that person with a bill. So I think people should make it very clear when they're compromising. Hey, I'm compromising this, but one day I'm going to take what I expect. Like, I'm going to take my pound of flesh. That's one of the reasons marriages go through trouble. People take their pound of flesh later. And you just have to say this once to your partner. Just once. I did this for you. What did you do for me? That's enough to throw acid on your marriage. And that's enough to like make your kids stop feeling like they want to do things for you. Like parents do this all the time to their kids. And I think I had this awareness when I had my kids. You know, maybe I'm just grateful that I had all of this awareness and this guidance and this teaching or this guidance that was given from the divine, that you know it's just something that I choose not to do with my kids. I do it if it's fun for me. Like there are times that there are family holidays that's just not fun for me to go to, and I say no, I'm not going to go. Like I know it'll make my kids happy, but there would be a specific discomfort associated with those holidays, and I don't want to put myself through that agony. It would be agony for me. So you just got to find what makes you completely uncomfortable and say, I'm not doing this. Instead of doing that, biting the bullet and then slapping a bill on your partner or your children. That's sadistic. That's mean. And you're never going to get love or anything that you're expecting in that whole drama that you do, slapping the bill. You're never going to get anything from that. Trust me. If not anything, you've pushed that person miles and miles away from you. So really, people who compromise, there's a little word of advice I come with, that when we compromise, and if you think that being the martyr and being the victim or being the poor me, you're going to get sympathy or you're going to like look like the good one, and later on you're going to slap all of this on your partner, you're going to, at the end of the game that you're playing, you're going to be penniless, you're going to be loveless, you're going to be everything less. Because compromise is a very, very, very manipulative game. It is the most toxic form of manipulation one can do. And even though people who compromise don't think so, they think they're doing something great. Every person who compromises, every woman, every mother, every parent, when they compromise, they are making themselves so superior by doing it. So compromise is a superiority. You can be in denial of it. You can say, no, I'm so generous, I am nice, I'm giving, I'm all of that. You can say that you're a saint, but compromise is nothing but sadistic superiority. So just burst the bubble for a whole bunch of people out there who think they're sitting on their high horse and thinking that they've done all of this. Well, you've done it for some sadistic pleasure. You've done it because you get to slap the bill. You get it because you get to control the person. So people give up stuff because ultimately they get to, control the people they sacrificed for. I mean, how many people in your life do you know? And I'm going to say this like I've seen this in out and center in like family dynamics. How many people sacrifice and then say, see, I did this for you. Like that is just so horrible when people do that. You feel so guilty. So that person gets to control you. So let's say your mom tells you that she sacrificed maybe, socializing or going for parties or going for holidays because of you. So the end, there's some kind of a bill they slap on you or some kind of an expectation they slap on you to repay that gesture, that whatever they did for you. So that's a superiority, and it is a judgment that, I did all of this for you and now it's my turn to receive. I know that it is a very, very big part of our culture. Sacrificing for children and then saying, I did all this for you, now what do I get in return? You are not supposed to get anything in return. You do it because you love it. You do it because you want it. You don't do it because you're trying to slap an expectation on that person. Don't play games in relationships. My first My first thing is never play these sadistic games in relationships because we don't even know we play it. Like now, after this awareness, you'll stop playing the compromise game. But even expecting the other person to like sacrifice and compromise, oh, you need to do this for me, you need to do that for me. Why does anyone need to do anything for anyone? Seriously, everyone needs to just focus on themselves and what is fun for them, what they need to do, and not worry about expectation, not worry about this compromise sacrifice game. The reason relationships go through so much trouble is because of these games. So, doing a quick recap, we spoke about compromise, how very in a very subtle way it is doing something, sacrificing, and you there's a whole lot of judgment that you put into it. It comes from superiority. It comes from you get to control the other person later, and it is just the most manipulative game that we play in relationships. And we play this with our children a lot. We play it with our spouses, our children, and I don't know, maybe other relationships as well. So stay away from the compromise game. If at all it is doing something, if it's hurting your relationships, I suggest that you look at it and make a choice to stop playing the game. I'll see you in the next episode. We're going to talk more on relationships. Every week, we're going to do a different topic. And I hope this audio and this episode created a whole lot of magic for you, because getting out of games can definitely create magic in relationships. For now, this is Sheelaa Bajaj signing off. I'll see you in my next episode. Till then, stay happy and stay away from games.